So these three skill sets that are key, that are essential for being successful. Number one is to embody the practices. Number two is to apply the principles. And number three is to follow a framework. So when you have these three things together, it gives you a true sense of confidence, a sense of that I can do this. And then you don't experience what we call imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't know enough and you're really just pretending to know, and feeling like you need to know more, so you need to study more. And that's really, it's not necessarily the answer. No, we can always be learning more, but learning it from a book isn't it. Yeah. And it actually stops a lot of people from practicing and from being of service in their community. You can't know everything, but when you have these skills, you'll be ready to assess any situation and offer support. So in some cases, that means knowing when to refer someone out if an issue is beyond your scope. And in that case, you're still being of service. So the first one is to embody the practices. So you don't just learn it, but you live it. So it goes well beyond book learning, beyond the academic approach. Experiential learning is the foundation of the trainings. You embody Ayurveda to whatever extent you're able at the time, and that'll allow you to know the extent of your offering. And straight away, we guide you to implement the practices of Ayurveda and yoga in your daily life so that you can experience the benefits yourself, but also experiencing what you're going to ask other people to do. And which means that you'll understand their challenges better and you can guide people. It'll be easier and it feels more authentic. Now, everybody's not going to be exactly like you. And so it also doesn't mean that you need to do it perfectly. So this is a really big block for people. Sometimes some people, who am I to guide people if I'm not doing it perfectly? None of us are perfect. Things have changed for me over the years tremendously. Yeah. And it's been an evolution. Some of that was because I didn't have access to information. And some of that was because I just wasn't ready. But when we're ready, we can do it. So don't let the perfectionism hold you back, or you may never start. And this is a conversation that Erica says she has with students all the time. And they contact us saying they're afraid to submit their first assignment about embodying the practices until they're doing it all perfectly. And it's really not about perfect. It's about having the experience. And this is that unlearning that I was just talking about. So we start to recognize, ooh, I have these things that are holding me back in life. And then we give you tools on how to release yourself from those things. And, being new at something is really a great place to be. So just start and just allow yourself to grow. We talk about it in terms, we practice Ayurveda. We practice it in our lives. We practice it when we work with people. Life is a practice. In our trainings, you develop your personal practice and your skills. So the next thing is to apply the principles. And this is what really allows everything to expand. So Ayurveda is based on unchanging principles of nature. So when you understand the principles and how they work, then you'll have the ability to assess any situation and offer solution. You can't learn enough to be ready for all the possible things that you'll encounter as you work with people. Yeah, it's just there's always going to be something new. We're human, and that uniqueness in us creates uniqueness in our conditions and our experience. And things can look really complex on the surface, and it can be really easy to get lost in the details, especially when you're thinking in the old way. In our trainings, we teach you the principles of nature and how to recognize them, and then how to apply the practices of Ayurveda so that you can guide people to move toward balance. See, when you know the principles, you can always see a way forward for your client. And then following the framework. Well, Ayurveda is a vast science. It's life. It is the science of living. And it's really an art as well as a science, right? Because our lives are really a work of art. And so you don't need to know all of it. Now, I've been learning and teaching and practicing for over 30 years, and I can still, learn new things, many. Yeah. But we have a clear method for applying Ayurveda in the modern world, and that's what I found works really well with thousands of people. And this is what we teach in our Ayurveda trainings. We keep things simple and practical. You develop the foundation, and then you work with that. We focus on the holistic approach, and which again means learning how everything is connected and how everything affects everything else. So we teach our students to become great educators and counselors, which means being observant and working with the current condition of clients. And while you're guiding them to participate in their own healing process, rather than just prescribing herbs or a list of foods or a diet without giving any context for what's happening or the solution. And unfortunately, this is what a lot of people are doing these days in Ayurveda. And honestly, it doesn't work very well that way. The client is still feeling disempowered and feeling dependent on the practitioner. So when you work with clients, your role is to gently guide them to understand what they're doing that's causing their problems. You don't help them, but rather you guide them to discover themselves so they can make choices from an empowered place. And you guide them to the root cause, and then to see how making simple changes brings great healing. And so that whole process then is empowering for them. Then it works long term. I always love the experience when somebody contacts me, 5 years later, and oh yeah, I've been doing all these things and they have a new situation. But otherwise, they've been handling themselves. They've been able to live their lives fully. So our trainings are for you if you're a yoga teacher, or experienced yoga student, or a massage therapist, nutritionist, medical professional, or if you have a totally unrelated background, but you're interested in wellness and natural healing. And there isn't any prior experience that's required, no prior experience in Ayurveda. These trainings aren't for you if you want to focus just on your own healing right now, in which case then Agni therapy is the perfect place for this. People who want to practice Ayurveda with a Western approach, in other words, we want to prescribe rather than educate, or just focus on fixing symptoms rather than taking a holistic approach to applying Ayurveda. And if you're mostly concerned with chasing information and having all the facts about Ayurveda being spoon-fed to you, we aim to be practical in our approach and also to leave room for students to have their own experience of the teachings and to come to their own conclusions. Many times if you ask a question in Ayurveda, the answer, if you had 5 practitioners in the room and you asked them a question, probably most of the time you would get the answer, well, it depends. Because then you're looking at that whole picture, and it depends. And then this is also not for people who are not willing to take responsibility for their own health. People who aren't willing to let go of how we've been taught to think. Having an open mind is really important when learning and applying Ayurveda. Okay, great. Let's see, are you ready to learn some more about our trainings?